right now as we speak.
Hey, y'all got that order for Nooski? Chino burger. Chino burger. Yeah, y'all got it. Hey, right? Oh, thank you.
Through the 12, I don't see nobody outside. Pussy boy, you don't get no rep on doing drive-by.
26-year-old Charles Jones was also known as Julio Fulio, was reportedly there to celebrate his birthday. I think he was turning, 26 or 27. Police are still trying to figure out a motive for the shooting.
Some tough guys live for dissing their rivals in every way possible, whether it's through social media posts or even dropping an entire album just to throw shade. While sometimes they get away with it, smooth as ever, other times, well, let's just say they quickly wish they hadn't. Let's take Mubu Crump, for instance. He decides to diss his dead ops from the OTF gang at their death site.
Hey, y'all got that order for Nooski? Chino burger. Chino burger. Yeah, y'all got it. Hey, right? Oh, thank you.
And finds out almost immediately. Then there's Ragiz, who dares to fumble by also dissing a dead op on the morning he was smoked and ends up paying with his life that same evening.
Pop out right now as we speak.
Let's dive right in. First up, we've got Mubu Crump, who really took things to a whole new level. He wasn't just dissing one of his fallen rivals, he went after two. So picture this. Crump starts by targeting Nooski, who, as everyone knows, was Lil Durk's cousin, making the beef even more personal. Crump was out in the streets stirring up all kinds of trouble with the OTF crew, and he didn't hold back. One day, he actually went live at the very spot where Nooski was offed, talking wild, with absolutely zero respect, making sure everyone knew exactly how he felt about OTF.
You feel me? Hey, ass up here on folks and them tweaking. Buying some shoes. Y'all see be up here though. Me up here on folks and this bill shoes. I look like Nooski.
He spit a ton of harsh words, going on, and surprisingly, nothing happened to him right then. He just walked away like it was any other day. But Crump wasn't done. Shortly after dissing Nooski, the OTF crew lost another key figure, Chino, who was Durk's manager at the time. Instead of dialing it back, Crump decided to take things up a notch. His go-to move: he'd go to the spots where his dead rivals were offed, hit the live stream and throw disrespectful slurs, or sometimes speak in veiled jabs, making it clear he wasn't holding back any hate.
Hey, y'all got that order for Nooski? Chino burger. Chino burger. Yeah, y'all got it. Hey, right? Oh, thank you.
People saw this as another major slap in the face to OTF, but Crump just wouldn't quit. And then, just to keep the trolling going, he hopped back on live again to diss Nooski one more time, claiming that Nooski had once threatened to off him, fueling the already intense beef even more. His hatred for OTF was clear, and he wasn't showing any signs of stopping. But all that changed on May 25th, 2018. Crump was outside a house party, just chilling, when a car rolled up and shots fired. He took 2 bullets to the arm and 2 to the torso. Even though he was rushed to the hospital, he didn't make it and ended up passing away from his injuries. Next up, we have Ragiz, who definitely knew how to make a scene online. He'd hop on live with his crew, throwing out all kinds of chaos and making these wild threats that, let's just say, didn't always hold up when the heat came back his way. So, here's the rundown. Ragiz, part of the White Guys, was well known as one of Sev's side's main rivals, and it seemed like he was constantly looking for a fight. He had a reputation for jumping on Instagram Live, trying to spark beef with Sev's side's own K-Flock, throwing verbal shots just to see if he could get a reaction.
I'm out. Pop out right now as we speak. Wanna make shows too. Pop out. Water my mother. Pop out right now.
Eventually, K-Flock got tired of the back and forth and claimed he'd actually run into Raw in public, saying Raw wasn't really about that life. And there's even a clip where K-Flock seems to be driving around, hinting he's looking for Raw while on IG Live.
Nah, you gotta move back. What a gang, they not doing nothing.
But Raw wasn't one to back down either. Not long after, he went live again, calling out K-Flock and telling him to show up, claiming he'd never seen him face to face and was more than ready for anything. And so the back and forth just kept spiraling. Soon after that, a new video started circulating, showing some Sev side guys chasing Raw through the streets, determined to catch him slipping, but Raw managed to dodge them every time. Still, you know how it goes. Luck only holds out for so long, and just a few weeks later, that streak ran out in a big way. On July 11th, 2021, Raw Giz was headed to the studio, catching an Uber, when two men on scooters rolled up out of nowhere and opened fire. The whole thing was caught on his Uber driver's dash cam, and the footage went viral almost instantly. And here's where things get even crazier. Just hours earlier, a 13-year-old Rollin' 80s Crips member named Jerian Elliott had been offed, and apparently, Raw had mocked his death online not long after. Turns out, the payback for that came way faster than he probably ever expected. Then there's YBC Dull, the Philly rapper who pretty much built his entire reputation around relentless and provocative tactics aimed squarely at his rivals. This guy didn't just stir up trouble, he practically lived for it.
We bully our ops. That's who we bully. We bully. We do that nigga called. They think they did something to us or they did something to us.
Dull had been on this path for years, dedicating himself to keeping the beef alive with every move. But his big moment came on No Jumper, where he went all in, throwing shade at just about every rival and neighborhood in Philly.
By the tires, grab crazy by the legs, they drug into the hellfire.
He didn't care who he was targeting. He was out for maximum shock value. And if that wasn't enough, Dull took things even further, earning national attention by pulling one of the most controversial stunts imaginable. He actually tracked down the unmarked grave of one of his enemies, a young man named Kwani, whose family had purposely avoided putting a headstone there to keep it hidden from his rivals. But Dull somehow got the information, showed up at the grave, and turned it into a spectacle. He even posted a picture of Kwani's body on Instagram, with captions that were as brutal and disrespectful as you can imagine. He made sure his rivals knew he wasn't about to play nice, not even with the dead. But Dull didn't just stop at that. Once he started, he went full throttle, flooding his social media with posts mocking his enemies, deceased loved ones, and targeting specific people. In one of his posts, he went after Kwani again, directly dissing his dead body and challenging others, basically asking them to try him if they had a problem. He even made a habit of posting about his rivals' graves, flaunting that he had no fear and was, in his own words, untouchable. He wasn't backing down. In fact, it seemed like he was practically daring his enemies to come for him. During his No Jumper interview, things took another dark turn when he was asked about his plans. Instead of talking about making peace or shifting his focus, Dull casually mentioned he had new music on the way, hinting at a sequel to his infamous track MC Buns and McNuggets.
In different states, I'm walking right past TSA, they check my luggage weight.
He even managed to work in a jab at his rivals who worked at McDonald's, poking fun at employees he claimed were connected to his enemies. It was almost as if he saw the beef as his brand, using every bit of chaos and tension to fuel his music and keep his name buzzing.
Parkside, Bud, Blue for Bud, all them. Is the real disrespectful. I'm gonna who you is. I will disrespect you. That's how I'm carrying it.
What's wild about Dull's approach is that it was almost like he had a death wish. He didn't limit his insults to a few people. He was going after entire neighborhoods, calling out anyone who dared cross him, and essentially putting a massive target on his own back. And just when you'd think he might dial it back a bit, he shocked everyone again near the end of the interview. When Adam asked him about his future, Dull cheerfully expressed a wish for more violence, even suggesting that it gave him more to rap about. It was like he was openly embracing the chaos, using it as creative fuel instead of avoiding it. Then came the final twist. Just 24 hours after a clip went viral of Dull boasting that none of his enemies had ever touched him, he was offed. The details of his death are dark. He was found on the 5500 block of North 6th Street in Philly, shot multiple times in the chest. Police are still investigating, but so far there have been no arrests, and it's almost like they might see his death as a kind of twisted justice. With how relentlessly Dull provoked his enemies, many think that his actions finally caught up to him in the most tragic and inevitable way possible. So next up is FBG Duck. And it's rumored that he met his tragic end because of his long-running beef with Lil Durk and his crew. If you're a Lil Durk fan, you might have caught some of his lines in the track Should've Ducked, where he seems to touch on some serious street business. And though he doesn't name drop, it's widely thought he's referencing none other than FBG Duck.
Throw that mask on when you jump out first, you better blast. Yeah, we don't like slow shit on his switch them switches.
They left his out tight. Bullets was hitting him, he was singing like Mariah.
Duck was no small name. He was a top player on 63rd Street, or STL EBT, and he came up with the Gangster Disciples, one of Chicago's most well-known street crews. And if you're familiar with the scene, you know the GDs and Black Disciples, BDs, go way back with their rivalry, a feud that includes some heavy names like King Von and Lil Durk himself. Duck lived that life and used his music as a way to reflect his experiences and air out his rivalries. Being part of the Flyboy Gang, FBG, he was well connected with the GDs and used his rising rap career to level up his game in the feud. Tracks like Slide showed he wasn't afraid to take shots at his enemies. Duck was deep in a conflict with O-Block and was aware of the dangers, especially as his music brought him more attention. He even took precautions like warning his friends not to share his location on social media. In one of his most provocative tracks, Dead Bees, he throws out major disses aimed at figures like Jerome Lobu Anderson, a member of the Black Disciples who was off in 2015. Duck's track also mentions Shero and Lil Steve, showing he was unafraid to call out specific names, and Dead Bees was just one example of him taunting rivals, which only escalated the tension.
Yeah, I heard about that too. Him though, he a pack too.
On August 4th, 2020, Duck was out shopping in the upscale Gold Coast area of Chicago when several cars pulled up, and a barrage of bullets ended his life. He was rumored to have had a $100,000 bounty on his head, and just days later, King Von from O-Block was seen handing out custom chains, a move that many took as a taunt aimed at Duck's death. Von didn't stop there. He even went on to mock Duck in interviews, trolling Duck's family and friends by pretending to be sympathetic while actually fueling the fire.
Gangsta of the year. What you think about that? Huh? What you think about Free's sweater? What sweater?
But in a twist of fate, less than 3 months later, King Von himself was shot and offed after a fight broke out with Quando Rondo's crew outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta. Von had tried moving to Atlanta to escape Chicago's violence, but his feuds followed him. His death was ruled as self-defense after the shooter, Lil Tim, avoided charges, though it didn't ease tensions. Lil Durk, who shared Duck's rivalry with O-Block, didn't miss a beat to diss his enemies, but Von's passing left fans with mixed feelings. Many thought his fate was a form of karma for his years of dissing Tuka, a 15-year-old from Chicago who was murdered back in 2012 and whom Von often mentioned in his songs. Even with Von's death, the cycle of violence didn't stop there. Quando Rondo, who tried to step back from the situation, couldn't entirely shake the feud. In 2022, he was ambushed at a gas station, and though he survived, his cousin Lil Pab was often the attack.
Shots fired, a fight taken to the streets, and this chaotic scene, the ending of a shooting that started in Los Angeles, California.
Then there is Julio Fulio, a guy who pretty much lived life on the edge and sadly showed just how far things can go when street beefs get out of hand. Fulio was known for his hardcore diss tracks, and it all came to a tragic end when he was fatally shot on June 24, 2024, while he was out celebrating his birthday in Tampa.
And they are shooting at Charles now, and you can see that he's the passenger in that car that's moving and trying to flee. And again,
but this wasn't some one-off incident. This was just the latest chapter in a long, violent saga that Fulio had been a part of for years, mostly due to him relentlessly dissing his rivals. Just a few months before that, in October 2023, he'd already been shot at, leaving him with a nasty foot injury, and he'd found himself in the middle of shootouts more times than most people would dare to think about.
Yeah, because this is like your fourth time, escaping, shootout. What, fourth time in 8 years?
Yep. It was this year, last year, I think 2 years before that, and then when I got shot when I was before that, yep.
Despite all of this, Fulio seemed almost unfazed by the violence. He'd even bragged about how he'd narrowly escaped death more than once, and he wasn't rolling with heavy security either. He was known for going solo, even though he had plenty of enemies. Fulio's beef with Young Ace, another Jacksonville rapper, was especially infamous. And it wasn't just on tracks either. This was a real heated feud that had them trading diss songs and watching things get dangerously close to real-life violence. Fulio's diss tracks went hard too, filled with brutal lyrics that didn't just take shots at his rivals but openly mocked their friends who had been offed. After some of Young Ace's associates were emdered, Fulio didn't hold back. He even made a dark remix of Fantasia's When I See You, using it to disrespect his enemies in a way that took things to a whole new level.
I don't see nobody outside. Boy, you don't get no rep out doing drive-by.
Every track seemed to add fuel to the fire, and Fulio's bars only got more cutting as the beef heated up. And Fulio wasn't about to back down either. Even after escaping close calls with death, he kept taunting his enemies, especially Young Ace. After a shooting in 2021, Fulio continued to mock his rivals, even bringing up Ace's brother and other fallen associates in his taunts. It was clear he wasn't ready to stop, even though he knew he was stirring up serious trouble. By June 2024, Fulio was out in Tampa, celebrating his birthday with a pool party. He posted all about it on social media, showing off his wild night, sharing his location, and even letting everyone know he was partying hard. It was like he didn't think twice about making himself an easy target, and tragically, it cost him. That night, Fulio was shot and offed, a grim reminder of how dangerous this game can get when the lines between music and real-life grudges start to blur. Next up is Bando Hothead, a young guy just 17 and with dreams of making it big in music. But his life was tragically cut short right near his own home. The story goes that someone came up to him and opened fire, hitting him multiple times in the head, groin, and back in a brutal attack. A year or so before all this went down, on November 7th, 2019, Bando Hothead teamed up with BG Lil Pat to drop a track called Facts, and they didn't hold back on it either.
What? Do you?
In that song, they called out several rival groups like Buck, Brick Squad, Seven Deuce, Del Mob, and WNB, throwing out some serious disses aimed at fallen members of these crews. The lyrics were bold, and it's no surprise they stirred up a lot of tension, adding fuel to already heated conflicts in the area. The timing of the song and the nature of the lyrics made many believe that Bando's death was no random act of violence but a direct act of retaliation. Sadly, his death just became another statistic in the ongoing cycle of gun violence in the area, where young lives are constantly at risk due to these feuds. Bando's passing highlights the dark reality of gang conflicts, where even those with potential futures get caught in the crossfire. Next up is Shoota Shells, whose real name was Sidron Doles, and he was definitely a controversial figure in the Chicago rap scene. Known for his ties to the Black P-Stone faction called Black Mob, Shoota Shells wasn't afraid to stir things up with his music. His track Death of 150 got a ton of buzz, racking up over 6 million views on YouTube. In this song, he went after his rivals, specifically targeting the No Limit crew and throwing some shade at fellow rappers like G Herbo. But like a lot of diss tracks, Death of 150 was more than just some trash talk. It really dug into the lives and deaths of his enemies, detailing the harsh realities of their existence. The lyrics hit hard, mentioning names like Little Herb, Bezos, Vito, Chemo, Pistol, Kobe, whatever you want to call him, the whole 150, dead or alive, he opts. It was a raw and unfiltered take on the rivalries and violence that shaped much of the gang scene in Chicago.
Bad blood, and then as we got older, high school, and then motherfuckers started playing with guns, people started dying, or somebody got shot.
Tragically, just a few months after that song dropped, Shoota Shells' own story ended violently. In April 2017, while he was getting into his car in Auburn Gresham on the 8100 block of South Polina, 3 guys rolled up in a white Nissan Altima and opened fire, hitting Shells multiple times in the head and torso, and he was left for dead. By the time paramedics got there, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Interestingly, just a month before his death, Shells had a chat with a hip-hop blogger about the violence that was tearing through the south side of Chicago. He suggested that for any real change to happen, the gangs needed to come together and work towards peace instead of letting their differences keep the cycle of violence going.
So, once a motherfucker get hit, blood,
It's a shame that his life ended the way it did, especially considering he seemed to have some hope for a better future amidst all the chaos.